Your Creative Push, episode 109.
Every little step you make, it matters. When you have a vase with water and pebbles and you put one pebble in every day, eventually the water is going to overflow and it's going to be full.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I am your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Eyoälha Baker. Youre is a Canadian photographer who is spreading joy one jump at a time. With her Jump for Joy photography project, she travels the world taking photos of people from all walks of life in midair as they jump for joy in an attempt to showcase the beauty of the human spirit. And Youre, thank you so much for coming on the show. I was wondering, before we get into that awesome project that you're doing, if we could talk a little bit about how you initially got into photography and creativity in general.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. It's really a pleasure to be speaking with you because I love that you're supporting creative artists. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
So photography for me has been a little bit, I'm a late bloomer. I've always loved imagery. I grew up around a lot of artists and stuff, but I never really, considered myself artistic or an artist for a long time. I took a film photography class when I was in high school, way back in analog before digital even existed. And I kind of took one class and it came very naturally to me, but I didn't ever think of it as a career or something that I would really pursue other than that I just really enjoyed it. And I think I took one class in college. And then I did apply to do a minor in photography in university and they didn't accept me. And I just it wasn't a drive for me. It was just always something that I liked. So I didn't really follow up with it. And it wasn't until really in my mid-30s when I got my first digital camera that I just fell in love with photography. It was like a little pocket camera, one of those power shooter cameras, that you could just stick in your pocket, 3.2 megapixels. And all of a sudden, photography was magical for me because I could take hundreds of pictures, experiment and play. And when I was learning, it was film and it was expensive and you didn't have the viewfinder that you could see what you were looking at. So it felt more limiting to me. And I think digital suits my personality because I'm one of those people that likes instant gratification, I guess. So I could play around with this camera and just so much experimentation. I didn't look at the directions at all. Those went out the window right away. And I went on a trip to Brazil and literally it was attached to my hand everywhere I went. And I just took photos of everything and anything, close up, far away, overexposed. I just tried everything and it just opened me up to it and I fell in love with it.
Absolutely. And that's really inspiring too. Like you mentioned that you're a late bloomer. I think that for a lot of people listening, they think it's too late for them, like they think, well, this hasn't been a part of my journey yet. So, why even get started now? And I think that's really important to, with digital photography, like you're saying, and how technology is so much smaller, you can put it in your pocket, you can experiment, you can take as many pictures as you want because it's not expensive. I think that, that should inspire a lot of people to just get into it.
Yeah, and I think because it wasn't for anything other than myself. Like I was literally traveling for 6 months by myself, and I started to really just connect with people with it because I would take photos of people and show them, and it was just this. I just discovered something as a way to view people and watch situations and express myself, and then at the same time connect with people. So it was a really, really incredible experience, and it's almost like something just clicked when I got a digital camera, and that was it for me. I fell in love with it.
That's great. Speaking of falling in love, I'm in love with your project, this Jump for Joy photo project, because I really appreciate the message and I really love the photographs themselves. Can you talk a little bit about why you started that and how that got started?
Thank you. That's very nice. Well, that actually came into being probably about 5 years after I started doing digital photography. And it's kind of a two-part answer to that question because I think you mentioned that you just saw my TEDx talk when I was talking about, there's two things. The way images are presented in the media has always really kind of irked me and really made me feel frustrated that the perspective we take and what we deem as newsworthy always seems to come from a very fearful, negative perspective. And I think that I had hit a point in my life where things just weren't working out, and I was feeling really down myself and overwhelmed. And I felt like, why can't we look towards the positive things to uplift ourselves? And I started focusing on creating images that really captured positive energy. And as I was traveling around again, traveling is always my kind of get back to myself point.
Good.
I just started doing jumping photos with friends, and we would always laugh, and it would just bring out such an amazing energy, and people would connect, and people walking by would laugh and start talking. And it was just this beautiful experience. And I thought, God, if I could do something on a larger scale with these images that would actually uplift people on a mass scale. And I came up with this, I think it's an actual concept, but I kind of adapted the concept of groupthink, when like masses of people are caught up in a specific kind of energy. And usually you'll see that in a riot or something where people are not normally destructive or, whatever, but they get caught up in this crazy energy and, start pushing each other and smashing things. And I thought, why can't the same be true with positive energy by capturing imagery that is capturing the essence of joy on a mass scale? Because the impact of joy is really beautiful. And I've seen it in situations where, I don't know, what's that movie? Invictus. Have you seen Invictus?
Yeah, I love it.
So that whole concept about bringing people together and the celebration and the energy of joy at the end of that, I think it's like some kind of game.
Rugby.
Rugby, thank you. Is that mass energy of uplifting, excitement, and celebration where it kind of erases boundaries because everyone comes together for something. Yeah, and then when I started sharing the photos, I just started sharing them online. People really instantly started responding to it, going, "Oh my God, I really needed this. This changed my day. I feel uplifted." And the response was really positive. And I thought, God, this is something, I'm really onto something here. And it's not just me that's desiring, feeling, and seeing more positive, uplifting energy. This is something that's, other people feel it too.
Absolutely. I love that mindset too of, that group think like you're talking about. One of my favorite quotes that one of my favorite podcasters, John Lee Dumas, says all the time is, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I really feel like that, at least for me, has been very true. When you're surrounded by like this like negative energy, you fall into it. I work in a poker room and I just am surrounded by just like negative energy all the time. And doing the podcast is like the complete opposite of that. I get to talk to inspiring people. I think it's really important what you're doing. And with your TED Talk, I was like, you're my girl, because my wife and I always fight. She loves to watch the news, and I can't do it. They just cherry pick the worst of humanity. Even if they run out of stories in Baltimore or something, they'll go across the country to where a couple other kids died somewhere. And it's like they just cherry pick those negative things and put them out there, and there's like one positive story to every 50 stories, and I can't do it, so I just don't watch the news anymore.
Well, it's interesting because if you think about, what news was intended for, it's informing people of things. But who decides, that death is more newsworthy than life? Or who decides that we don't put how many babies were born every day instead of how many people died every day? Like, what's the deciding factor on that? And how does that affect us emotionally? And so that's it's a lot to try and capture in a silly jumping picture. But when you start putting them, all together in this collection of people that have taken time out of their day to come and jump around in the name of joy and to play and be creative and get out of their comfort zone and to connect with the idea that joy can affect people, I think that there's something really special about that. So that's sort of where that whole project started from, was just me initially wanting to change the way I felt and feeling impacted and having all this outside imagery, wanting to find something different to counter it,
Absolutely. And in your TED Talk, you talk about a little bit about what this whole project has kind of brought to your life and the opportunities that have come to you because of it. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, my life has really, really changed since I started this project. And I think it was a combination of me being really dedicated to changing the way I perceive the world and the way I interact in the world through joy. And just saying yes to opportunities, whether or not I know what I'm doing. And I think that a lot of my life, I didn't really put myself out there, and I didn't take those kinds of risks like I would do other things outside my comfort zone. But being creative is such a vulnerable thing, and being open to sharing your work and connecting people and putting your work up for the world to see, it takes some courage. And so I just decided to try everything. Every time an opportunity would come, I would consider it. And if it got me excited, I would say yes. So one of the biggest things that came for me was the opportunity to put my photographs up on a wall. And the wall was 32 feet high by 120 feet wide. I'd never even thought about making a mural before. No. But I met the woman who wanted to make a mural project. I mean, she wanted to get a painter out there, but she didn't have anyone lined up. And she was like, you can put your posters up if you want. And I hadn't even ever printed anything before. I was just like, yes, I will do that. And basically, it was almost like as I said yes, it was done in my mind. Like there was no turning back. I was doing this thing and it was going to be awesome. And I would just figure it out. So that's what I did. And seriously, magic happened. It was so synchronistic, the way things fell in place. I mean, I worked really hard to make it happen, but it almost seemed like it was alchemy. Just, I needed something, it would appear. I needed help, it would appear. And sometimes in the strangest forms, like the alleyway, I think I mentioned in the talk, is in one of the poorest parts of Canada. And it's in a really bad alleyway with drug users and homeless people and, people with mental illness that have nowhere else to live, a lot of people that live on the streets. And it's not really an area that I've hung out a lot in before this. And I just always felt when I would go through this area kind of overwhelmed and sad and helpless. And to the point where I just didn't want to spend time here because I felt so sad for these people. And that's the perspective I was seeing them from. But when I started this project and I was in this joyful energy and sharing joyful images, it's like my whole approach to these people in this situation changed. And their response was just incredible because they responded back with the same kind of energy. So while I was figuring out how to make this mural, calling printers, saying, how do I do this? Like, I want to paste up posters. I don't know what to do, and then I would get put in touch with someone. And then I met a street artist who does kind of like little paste ups and stuff. And he showed me how he did it. And so I just kind of copied that. And then I looked up on YouTube how Shepard Fairey does the glue.
Oh, cool. Yeah. If you're going to take it from somebody, you should take it from him.
Yeah, I did email a couple of the bigger paste up artists and they didn't get back to me, but whatever. I learned how to do it on YouTube. And I just kind of had the lift delivered and I jumped on it and I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I got on it and it wouldn't go to the full height, so I couldn't reach the height. And I was like, oh no, how do I do this? And I just was kind of stuck there. And then all these people from the laneway, most of them really drunk or, high on something, they all had certificates and they showed me, they would guide me how to park this thing. One guy got me pieces of plywood to help level it, and they'd come and check up on me. And it was just this really beautiful connection because they just loved what I was doing, and they were so helpful and kind. And it was like these people that had nothing, And that was the response to joy. It was the response to, wow, you want to share joy with us? We want to help you make that happen. So it was really beautiful.
That's one of my favorite parts of the story from the TED Talk. And I love how you use the word synchronistic because I'm a big proponent of synchronicity. And I think that, like you mentioned, the whole saying yes, once you made that decision to say yes, you've made the decision in your mind, and you've also said it out loud, and then the universe kind of picks up on that. It's like, okay, all right, let's see what we can do to help you out. And sometimes you do have to literally ask for help, like, reach out to people who have the expertise, have the knowledge. Not everybody will get back to you, but you can ask for help if you have this big project that you want to take on, and you'd be really, as you were, you'd be amazed, what the universe can kind of give you to move you along.
Yeah, and that was, I think, part of my growing and learning over this period as well, is how much I had to rely on people for help, because I started this project after I'd run out of money.
Right.
And I was like, now I'm going to do this massive worldwide project. And I was just so broke, and I was couch surfing, and I really had to rely on help from other people, which was hard because I'm an independent person and I've always taken care of myself. But it was like something about doing this project really, really felt important to me. So I was willing to just do whatever it took to focus on it full time. And probably not the easiest route to do, but I did it. And then, that's sort of one of the situations. And I just learned how to ask for help a lot and how to be open to things that came my way. And it's been a pretty incredible experience that I actually have a hard time putting into words.
Yeah, in your TED Talk, you mentioned how, the photographs give that, instant emotive response. And my wife and I were watching the TED Talk together. And I have to say, when we saw what was one of the saddest things I think I've ever seen was when they were taking that down, we both gasped out loud, like we both had that emotive response. Can you talk about that a little bit, and then how you came back from that?
Yeah, that was definitely, I took that in the heart.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I knew it wouldn't be a permanent thing because it's a paste up and they don't last forever. But I was actually on my way to do a photo shoot on the bus, and I hadn't even been by the mural in a really long time. So it was, again, synchronistic that I happened to pass it as it was coming down. I think it wouldn't have been as heartbreaking for me if it was just, something I'd done and put up. I probably would have been upset, but to me, it had so much meaning to the people in the neighborhood. There were a couple of hundred people in the mural, and and the people that had helped me. And I just felt like, I wanted to be able to at least let them know it was coming down, or, a few people hadn't even seen it yet. And probably a lot of people hadn't seen it yet, but yeah, I really was heartbroken, but it didn't last that long because I think I'd done so much work already on looking for the positive outcome. Like, how can I turn this around and make it positive? And when I shared the news, because I literally was shaking, and I was like, oh my God, my mural's coming down. And I posted on my Facebook page. And I just had this mass response from all my friends and followers and stuff like that. And they were like, you make another one, just make another one. And it just clicked again. And I was like, I'm going to make another one. And literally 3 days later, I just walked through the same neighborhood because being there was really important to me. And I wanted to be able to share again in that same neighborhood with that energy. And because when I was putting up the first mural, I hadn't, I had people from all over the city, but no one from that specific neighborhood in it. And I'd have people walk by saying, oh, I want to be in it. I want to be in it. But I already had all the photos. So, I didn't have any space to add more people at the time. So when I was walking around, I found another wall, and this wall was double the height. So it was massive. Crazy undertaking. And it was in the worst condition, huge holes, really rough pieces of wood and metal, rusted metal sticking out. It was just the worst condition. But I looked at it, it was almost oh, that's the wall. And then I just walked there's a little print shop in the base of the building. The wall faces a parking lot. And then there's, it's an old heritage building, really tall and skinny, and kind of, I'd seen the wall before, but it had never kind of hit me like that, where I was like, I'm making a mural on that wall.
Right. The timing wasn't right until then.
Yeah. But I walked in, I just said, who owns this building? Because I knew in Canada anyway, you have to get the owner's permission and they have to apply for the permit for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went in and was like, who owns this building? I want to make a mural on this wall. And so they told me, and I went and found them. And then they told me I had to speak with the people that run the building. There's a single room occupancy, which is basically low income housing. Mm. So there's an organization here called Atira Women's Resource Society that ran it. I looked them up and called them and I said, hey, I know this sounds kind of weird, but I want to make a big mural of people jumping on your wall. Again, just kind of like random. and they got back to me immediately and they were like, yeah, I love it. Sounds like a great idea. Let's meet up and talk about it. And I was kind of shocked because I thought I'd have some kind of like, have to jump through some hoops or...
No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. But so I set up a meeting with the CEO and came with my argument of why this was a good idea. And she didn't ask me anything. All she said was, what do we need to do to make this happen? And it was just full on straight from there.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's so inspiring because it's like, I think a lot of people struggle with when they get ideas like this, they don't think that they don't have the authority to do it, that they need some sort of permission. And yeah, like you did have to get a couple permissions, but sometimes it's not as big of a wall, no pun there either, as you might think, like you can actually try to do these like crazy ideas that you have,
Well, yeah, it's true. But I actually did end up it was a lot more work, like higher, not only the size of the wall was bigger, there was way more people, like players involved. I had 5 people on a license agreement, permits.
Oh, wow.
I had it was a lot to get this one done. And I think it was also self-initiated. So I had to come up with the money for the idea. It wasn't like someone was paying me to do it,
And how did you get that? Did you do like a Patreon or anything like that, or did you just shell out yourself?
Yeah, I did crowdsourcing online. I made about half the money. I got a grant from the city. I got a grant from BC Housing, it's like a government organization that owned the building. And a lot of this was actually thanks to Atira Women's Resource Society. They having them be part of it was really helpful for me because they were already established in the community and they know a lot more about fundraising than I do.
Sure.
And and then I also just had so many people willing to volunteer and offer services in kind and on and on and on. I mean, it was just a really beautiful way that everyone kind of came together and was like, yeah, we want to see this happen. And yeah, it was synchronistic, but it was also a heck of a lot of work.
But very worth it, right?
Oh, so worth it. So worth it.
That's great. And for anybody that, wants to see this visually and wants to hear your TED Talk, we'll have that linked in the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Eyoälha, which is EYOALHA. Or if it's easier, just go to yourcreativepush.com/jumpforjoy. So with that project, you've already talked about some of the resistances, some of the things that kind of, made it more difficult for you. As you continue to do this project and continue to, take photos of people jumping for joy, I think the end goal is or not the end goal, but one of the big goals is to make a book, right, of 1,000 photos? Yeah, well... That was a goal that I gave myself initially because it seemed so unrealistic and impossible that I just was like, that's going to be my end goal. And I literally, when I first started this project with no money, thought I would have it done in a couple of years. But being more realistic now and also having these experiences come up along the way, I see it more as a long-term goal of the project where I can actually have more experience to add to it than just a bunch of pictures. Sure.
The travel part of it, I think, is starting to pick up. I actually just am in talks right now of maybe doing a Jump for Joy mural in Utah, which is really exciting.
Oh, cool.
Not signed and delivered yet, but I think that as the project grows, my vision for it is growing and kind of falling into place. Mm-hmm. And you talked about one earlier about resistances and difficulties to overcome. And one of my hardest things has been, because it's a passion project, I haven't monetized the project, and it's been really difficult that way to keep it going because I don't have funding and I don't want to charge people to be in photos because it doesn't feel it doesn't feel right for me to do that.
It might not jump as high.
Not about jumping high, it's about sharing that joyful energy. But
I hear.
yeah, so I think the book thing is something that I would really like to do eventually, but it's kind of on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I'd also like to do just a local book about this experience in the downtown east side and connecting with the people here, because I think that from an outsider's point of view, when you come through and you see people on the streets and they're struggling and asking for money and doing drugs, I think people get the wrong idea of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be able to share my story and interaction with the people here, because it's actually a really beautiful community and people are really, really generous and kind. And because I approached them from a place of joy, I got to see that part of them as well, that beautiful kindness. And I think that we tend to come across these people and see pity and sadness because that's how we feel when we look at them. Anytime the way that we approach someone or interact with a situation, we're going to get that coming back at us. And so I'd like to be able to share that in a book too, because my second mural is going to be coming down fairly soon. It's a paste.
No.
Well, it's a paste up, so it's just nature of it. It's starting to peel off. So,
how can people support you, or how can people find more out about the project and perhaps get involved if they want?
I would say to go to my blog website, which is www.jumpforjoyphotoproject.com, and to follow along on my social media. I'm really active on Instagram. That's my favorite thing right now.
Yay! And that's Jump for Joy Photo Project on Instagram. Right? Yep.
And I also have one with my name, so it's Eyoälha, Eyoälha. And
also your website is eyoälha.com, EYOALHA.com. We'll have everything, including more links, linked in the show notes page. Again, yourcreativepush.com/jumpforjoy. Eyoälha, it's time for the final push, and this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, that's thinking, maybe it's time for me to do this big project that I have in my mind, or maybe a smaller project, or maybe it's just time for me to just do my work today. And just give them your best words of advice and push them into pursuing their creative passions.
Okay, I'll do my best. Well, I think for me, in the larger projects where I have no experience or I'm overwhelmed because they are things I've never done before, I think there just takes a lot of faith in things working out. And like we were talking about earlier, of just seeing the finished project as being done and then figuring out how to make your way there. That was something that I'd never really done anything like that before, and I'd never had that experience, but it really worked for me that there was no other option in my mind. So anytime I came into some kind of roadblock or something, I would find a way around it or over it. So I was very determined. The other thing is just on a everyday basis, doing something creative every day. One little thing, like when I started this project, I would just do photo shoots and post them online. That's how it all started. Like one little creative thing a day, one little step a day, and that's how you build something. So I look at it like when you have a vase with water and pebbles and you put one pebble in every day, eventually the water is going to overflow and it's going to be full. So every little step you make, it matters.
I love that analogy. Yeah, every little pebble counts, and not only does it help you to build a body of work, but it just gets your mind thinking in a much more positive way, as we were talking about before, and also just a more creative way. You are actively looking for more ways to be creative and more opportunities. So I love that.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully people will feel inspired to try new things and get out there and do things that don't feel comfortable.
Absolutely. Make yourselves uncomfortable, people. That's what it's all about. Eyoälha, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
Thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Eyoälha. Folks, there is a really, really important lesson in this episode today. One that has really been influential to me. It's understanding that that her whole project isn't about what the project was. It's about what the project does. For her to say yes and to immerse herself in this joyful project, she was able to approach life in the same way. And this isn't a lesson about art. This is a lesson about life. Call it the law of attraction or call it whatever you want. But when you put good vibes out there, when you put the joy out into the world, you'll get it back. And you'll be able to bring things out of other people that you would never expect. And the easiest way for you and for me to get to that place is to immerse ourselves in those things that call to us, the thing that nags you, the thing that makes you listen to this podcast, in order to get the inspiration and the sense of community to fuel you to do your work, to do your art, to do your creative thing, to do that thing that you need to get from inside of you out. Embrace that, and also don't keep it a secret, and make it a part of your life, and not just in the sense of doing your work like we try to encourage you to do every day, but make it seep into all aspects of your life and bring you fulfillment and joy. I think that's the number one lesson here. Because when you're smack dab in the middle of the thing that you love to do the most, you can't help but be joyful. You can't help but to jump for joy, and people pick up on that. And that's the whole point of being a creative person. That's the whole point of expressing yourself in a way that most other people are either too scared of or too lazy to do. And if you can try to find those moments that Youre captures, that moment where you're in midair, just so happy doing the thing that you love, I think those are the moments that you should strive to find. Even if they're fleeting, even if it's just a snapshot, try to get them as many times as you can. Try to get them every single day. And if you're able to capture them and somehow express them to other people, I think that's the whole point of life, honestly. On Monday's show, we have Gabriel Piccolo.
Don't wait for some magic source of inspiration to come. It may happen, it may not happen. You can't rely on that. That's exactly how I used to approach my creativity. I used to wait for this inspiration. You have to chase after your own source of inspiration. Art is all about self-knowledge. So it's your job to find what inspires you, what triggers your own creativity.
Piccolo is an insanely talented artist who did this 365 days of doodles, where he made these, quote, doodles that ended up being just completely complex and amazingly detailed and awesome drawings that he decided to call doodles. But he really gained a massive following online after doing that, and he comes on the show to talk a little bit about why he likes to challenge himself and his ways for getting past procrastination, which is one of the things that I always try to get by as well. So I really had a fun talk with him, but that is for you on Monday. Hopefully today you are inspired to go and get your work done. I hope that you can have a very creatively fulfilling weekend. I hope that you can find ways to jump for joy. I hope that if you have a big project, you can just finally decide this weekend, to see it as done. And then now it's just a matter of you finding the ways to fill that in, to complete that project that's already done in your mind. It's just a matter of you putting in the work. Other than that, I hope you have an amazingly great weekend. Enjoy the summertime as it is in full force. Thank you so much for listening. I love you all, and we will see you on Monday if you need the creative push again. Have a great weekend, everybody.